This is huge. It is huge. Speedy Gonzalez here. I dare say for 2025, this plant might be the fastest growing plant. The trick to getting this plant to grow really fast, just coming close. If you want plants that don't waste time, here are 10 of my fastest growers of 2025. Seriously, it felt like they grew an inch every time I walked by. Some of the plants from last year are still pretty fast, not gonna lie. But a couple of new plants have made the list. So if you're curious, let's not waste time. Let's get started. The first plant on today's list is this one. This is my Philodendron Micans. I got this plant, I think, in November of 2024, so November of last year. I have had it just about a year or so. And this plant is definitely a really fast grower. It's stunning. I love the dark foliage. I know I'm late to the game. This plant was popular way back in the day. Like, I don't want to say way back, but it was popular a long time ago. And I saw it around in collections. For some reason, I thought I heard people having a hard time with it. I didn't want to feed into the hype. I didn't want to just get it because everyone had it. And I was also cautious because of what I heard about it. But this plant has actually been quite easy for me so far. It hasn't been that difficult. I am in love, so in love with the dark velvet leaves. They're gorgeous. The only con I would say about this plant is that when pests get it, it will sort of give this golden look to the leaves. It will, you could see pest damage on it. It will be very evident. But if you can keep this plant clean, give it a self-watering pot, which is what I have mine growing in. The mixture, I think I just have it in like a chunky soil mix. I think this plant will grow very fast for you. You might think to yourself that it's not that long for a plant that you got just last year, a year ago, but I actually took a couple cuttings of this, gave it to friends, or a friend took a couple cuttings, stuck it back in here, took a couple cuttings that where thrips had gotten to it. I've chopped back this plant a couple of times and I'm still surprised at how quickly it grows for how much I've chopped it back. So far, like I said, it hasn't been too difficult for me, but it's just my singular complaint is thrips, just the way it looks when thrips get at it. But it's not a magnet. I won't say that. It's just treat it regularly. I like to treat my plants with horticultural oil and Safer's Endol, and recently alcohol when I turn my grow lights off. And if I just do that, it's not too bad. Also, if you want this plant to look gorgeous and you want the dark leaves to stand out, wash the leaves regularly. Sometimes when dust settles on the leaves, it's not obvious, but it will look a little dull. Not that you even notice it. I think you don't notice it until you wash it. So be sure to wash this plant now and then. Just stick it in the sink, spray it down, and it's good to go. But anyways, this is one of my fastest growers. I can't go wrong with this one. Love it. The next plant I'm going to talk about, I dare say, is probably the fastest growing plant in my collection. I think I can give it that title. I think I sure can. It's the fastest growing plant in my collection for this year. And this one will not surprise you if you own it. It is the Philodendron Lemon Lime. This plant is so fast. It grows like lightning. And in true philodendron fashion, it is super easy to care for. It is gorgeous. The leaves, the heart-shaped neon type, fuchsia, lemony, I just cannot find words to describe this plant. It is so beautiful. And I just love the way the leaves have this satin look. They're so shiny. And what I love most about this plant is, or what impresses me, I should say, about this plant is how quickly it's growing in a north-facing window. I live in North America, specifically Canada. So north-facing windows have the least amount of sunlight. South-facing, the opposite, gets blasted with direct sunlight. In that north-facing window, that plant is amazing. It's doing amazing. It's growing so fast that as it goes down into another plant that I have at the bottom, I actually curve the leaves back up, growing back up into itself. As it grows upwards, the leaves get bigger. It's just fantastic. It's so fast that I've taken cuttings from it and created another plant. The trick to getting this plant to grow really fast, like the majority of my other plants, just coming close, self-watering pots. If you know my channel, I scream self-watering pots off rooftops get yourself some self-watering pots. That will be one of the best ways to grow your plants as quickly as possible. Just make sure you're balancing the hydration that you're giving the plant with high amounts of light. But even then, this plant in a self-watering pot in a north-facing window where, like I said, it's not getting a lot of light, it's still thriving. So trust me. And let me just quickly show you the propagations that I took from that plant. So these are the propagations that I took off the mother plant. I don't even know how long ago, maybe in the spring, but it is just gorgeous. I'm just in love, so in love. You see those leaves, like what I was telling you about, they're just super stunning. I think maybe I have a little too much light. Gonna back away. Those leaves, they are just stunning. I don't quite know when I made these propagations. I actually made a Instagram reel about it. If I can find it, I'll insert it here. But that's when I sort of just took cuttings off the main plant, got some soil, just stuck it into the soil, and that was it. I must say it's not as fast as the one in the window, and I do believe that's because this one is not in a self-watering pot. Although someone else may look at this and say, whoa, this is pretty fast considering how long ago I put these together. But when I look at how quickly the first one, the one in the north window, grows, like this one is not as fast. But again, it has to do with watering. So my goal moving forward is to make sure that I am staying on top of the watering with all of my plants, but especially the ones not in self-watering, so that they can not get left behind, they can keep up. You'll notice a trend here, another vining philodendron, the Philodendron Brazil. I'm looking over there because that's where it is. If you have a Philodendron Brazil, you know that it's a pretty fast growing plant, especially if you give it higher amounts of light. If you watch my low light houseplants video, you would notice that I mentioned the Philodendron Brazil. It is a plant that can survive and tolerate lower light. But if you put it in lower light, it will significantly slow down in its growth. It could do well in medium or high light. The more light you give it, the faster it grows. I'm not going to take it down from where it is because I've already broken 2 leaves since I started this video. So I'm going to try to protect my plants while I show them to you. I experience a lot of damage when I film videos because the plants get knocked about. My Philodendron Brazil, I have actually taken a couple cuttings. I can't remember if I gave some to a friend or if I just trimmed them back just because it was starting to get out of control, starting to go into other plants. So I definitely trimmed that plant back. And what I noticed it started doing is that it slowly is starting to climb up the wall. So that's another reason why I don't want to move it, because I actually wanted to keep climbing up the wall. I want to see what it does. I want to see how far it can go. I just want to see that. So that's super exciting. If you want a little bit of yellow variegation with a little bit of green, just in case you feel like you don't like the yellow color of some plants, I think the Philodendron Brazil is a great fast growing plant. Make sure you're always hydrating your plants and giving it medium to higher light in order to increase the speed of growth. So the next plant on today's list is another one that I'm going to have to give you B-roll of because it is so big and so commanding that I cannot take it out from where it is, but you may be able to see it behind me, and that is my Philodendron Buono. My Philodendron Buono was also in last year's fastest growing houseplants list. But look at that plant last year compared to how it looks right now. It is huge. This plant is incredibly fast. I think a lot of you have had great experiences with this plant. It's just a beautiful philodendron with gigantic leaves, especially if you put it on a moss bowl. And it is just beautiful. It has stunning, stable variegation in that, unlike a lot of other plants, it doesn't really depend too much on light in order to give you the beautiful whitish, yellowish, creamish leaves. It is beautiful. I just love this plant. When the new leaves come out, it will have a higher amount of variegation. As they harden off, they become sort of this darker minty green color. I have lost a lot of leaves on this plant because it was just getting so fast and really root bound that I couldn't keep on top of the watering. Having it on a moss bowl helps me to keep up the hydration, but the plant has since then outgrown the moss bowl. So it is way taller than the moss bowl. And so the newer leaves aren't as big, but don't worry, the plant is still growing incredibly fast. I am tempted to put in another moss bowl to help the leaves to size up. I don't know. We'll see about that. I don't know. But again, the Philodendron Buono is a really fast plant. If it's not growing that way for you, you know what I'm going to say. Put it in a self-watering pot and put it on a moss bowl. A moss pole really helps the leaves to size up. It really helps to keep it hydrated, and it really helps it to grow a whole lot faster when it has that support. A little bit earlier this year, I want to say that's when it was at its prime. That's when it was just thriving. Since then, I've become really busy. I traveled and my plants got a little neglected. So my plants aren't doing as wonderfully as they once did at some point in the year, but that's okay. We're all here for the journey. The next plant on today's list is also one that I featured in last year's fastest growing houseplants video. Did I? Was it in last year's list? But it was in a list from last year around this time of year, but it's in this year's fastest growers list. It's this guy. It is my Manjula Pothos. Look at it. I love this plant. Love, love, love this plant. And it's super fast. You last saw this plant, I want to say, is in this video. I'm just going to show it here. And that's a video about houseplants that I would repurchase if I had to start my collection all over. If you haven't seen that video, you may want to check it out. The Manjula Pothos is definitely one of my fastest growers. Let's talk about foliage first. White and green and white leaves with sometimes yellowish variegation depending on the plant that you get. And it's true to the pothos theme where it is just incredibly fast. Honestly, I put this plant on a moss pole initially to help the leaves to size up, but the plant is so fast that it outgrew the moss pole before I can get it to properly size up. Like Sydney Plant Guy or even my mom. My mom has been able to get her Manjula leaves to size up. She just puts one vine on a moss pole, and for some reason, it seems to take its time. Not mine. Speedy Gonzalez here. It's in a rush to get to the top. I don't know. I do have that hit the ceiling. I do have multiple plants in here, and every time I chop it, every time I take a cut, it pushes out a new vine. So naturally, it is full and lush. I have it growing in a lot of soil, but a very aerated soil mix, and in like a really, what is this? This is like not even an 8-inch pot. I think this is more than an 8-inch pot. But what I've done is I've stuck it on top of another plant pot. So when it drains out, it drains in that. You'll get to see it in my houseplant collection tour video that's coming up soon. So stay tuned. But anyways, that's this guy. Pretty fast. Again, if you want to speed up that growth, give it a moss pole and it will speed up and size up for you. But very thirsty. Again, blast your plants with the light in order to increase the speed of growth. Next time I show you that plant, I'm giving you B-roll. I hope you enjoyed the video so far. If you are, give it a thumbs up so it lets me know to make more like this. And if you learned something new, consider subscribing. I love to share tips and tricks on what I do to help my plants thrive in my videos. So the next plant on the list is a Hoya. The Hoya that I'm talking about is this guy. And if you watched my How to Grow Your Hoya Fast video, you would know the lore of this plant. And this is my Hoya Obovata, my very light Hoya Obovata. It needs some water. I grew this plant from, was it one leaf? Yes, I think I grew this plant from one leaf. So originally I grew it from one leaf. If you look at my How to Grow Your Hoya Fast video, you will see this plant and you'll see the journey. You'll have more information, more details onto how I did it. And I also had a second Hoya that I added in here. So a second Obovata. That one probably had maybe, I don't know, 5 or so leaves. Once again, in that same video, you will see these plants separately. But since then, I've potted them up together, but it no longer lives in a self-watering pot. Sadly, I did not have a self-watering pot at the time. Since then, I've started making my own self-watering pots. And so I think this might be repotted. It might get put into one of my DIY pots. But this plant is definitely super fast growing if you, once again, stay on top of the watering. You've got to give this plant lots of water. Also treat for pests. If you feel like your Hoya is slowing down, I feel like pests, especially flat mites and thrips, they tend to eat away at those new leaves and tend to make the plant feel like it's growing a lot slower than it actually is. Always be treating for pests, especially if you feel like it's not growing super fast for you. And yeah, that's this guy. I love these splashy leaves. Mine sometimes gives less than splashy leaves. Before I used to cut them out, but now I think I've started to just leave them and just let them do their thing. And I just got tired of cutting this plant. That's my Hoya Obovata, one of my fastest growers. This is huge. It is huge. If you watched my favorite Hoya of 2025 video, you might be able to guess the next two plants that I'm going to talk about. So that I don't damage my plants, I'll just give you some very generous B-roll of that video. The first plant that I'm going to talk about is the Hoya Crassipetiolata Splash. It's a lightning bolt. It is so fast. I want to say it's the fastest grower, but I think the one that I'm going to talk about after this one is in fact my fastest growing Hoya. Anyways, the Hoya Crassi, let me show you a little bit of B-roll of how this plant looked last year in my fastest growing houseplants video. That plant, this is what it looked like a year ago. 1 year ago, and this is what it looks like now. I think I may have taken a few cuttings of this plant to sell and create a secondary plant. Yes, I did, actually. I did. So it's had a couple cuttings. I've lost maybe 1 or 2 leaves because it took a tumble recently. My son knocked it over. But still, this plant is incredibly fast. And I think it would be even bigger and bushier if I repotted it, because it really needs to be repotted. Again, self-watering pot, bright light is how you get your Hoya to really speed up their growth for you. This plant, I've said a whole lot about it. I've spoken about it recently. If you want more details, you could check out my favorite Hoya of 2025 video. You will get all the details on how I grew this plant. And you can also check my Hoya collection tour if you want to see where I have my Hoya stationed in my collection. Well, as of a couple of months ago. But this plant is incredibly fast. My probably fastest growing Hoya, Hoya DS70 or my Hoya Boutonnier SPF or my Hoya SPF Boutonnier. I can never get it right. That Hoya, oh my goodness. I think that's my fastest growing Hoya, literally. Sometimes I wonder if plants seem really fast because they have multiple growth points. And so you're not waiting on one single growth point to give you a new leaf. Just like my Manjula Pothos, when a plant has multiple growth points, it feels like it's growing faster because you're getting multiple leaves at once. So that could probably be why some of these plants feel like they're really fast growing for me. Here's an idea. If you want your plant to feel like it's growing faster or you want a fuller plant, don't be afraid to cut it back and stick some of the cuttings back into the soil or back into the substrate. That will give you a fuller plant to feel or give the impression that your plant is growing faster because you have multiple growth points. That's the case with this plant. I didn't do it though. That's how the plant came. So I bought this plant as a really tiny, cute little itty bitty bushy plant. I wish I had a picture, insert a picture, but that's even when after I'd had it for, I think about maybe a month or a couple of weeks, less than a month. That plant was even smaller when I got it. But anyways, this plant is super fast. Again, very bright light. It lives in my south facing window. Give it a self-watering pot and that plant will explode for you. It is extraordinarily easy, like incredibly easy. So if you want something fast growing, really satisfying, I would definitely recommend that plant. And it sells in Home Depots for about $6, 6 Canadian, which it probably is about the same in the US, but it sells really cheap, for really cheap. It's very easy to find, easy to propagate. So definitely if you're looking for a fast grower, I would recommend that one. The next plant on today's list is one that I think this one might surprise you because I don't hear a lot of people talking about this plant for its speed of growth. And that plant is the Philodendron Verrucosum. The Philodendron Verrucosum is one of my favorite philodendrons because it has these incredibly dark leaves as a base with these fuchsia green veins in them. They're absolutely gorgeous, especially if you could get this plant on a moss pole and let it size up for you. That was my goal with this plant, but I haven't been able to get it done. Part of the reason why I haven't been able to get it done is because the plant is so fast growing. It is so fast that it very, very quickly outgrows the moss pole that I've made for it. And then it just starts to become this huge bush. Really, it does. I have chopped this plant back so many times. I think in the past year, I think I've chopped it back maybe 3 times, like really, really chopped it back. And I think that just makes it grow even faster and just makes it even more ferocious in the way it grows. It's super fast. Honestly, it would have had more leaves if I didn't get hit with thrips in my collection. I just got slammed with thrips. And so I lost a lot of leaves trying to snip back thrips away and try to get the really infested leaves out of my collection. So it doesn't look as full as it would have looked if it didn't get infested by thrips. But this plant is so fast growing. The con of this plant is that it has really long internodal spacing. So basically the space between every leaf that grows out, the space on the vine between each new leaf is very long. And I used to think that if I just blast it with light, it will shorten that space. But no, it's just a characteristic of the way this plant grows. And so it very quickly will outgrow my pole and outgrow your pole and just start to look really bushy. And I think if you don't mind this plant looking like a bush at some point in your collection, which is still pretty, but if you don't mind that, I would think that's a great plant. But if you also want to get a nice big beautiful leaves, you could do that too. My goal is to do that, and I think in 2026 I'm going to try to do that. So I'm going to start this plant over, chop it up, and properly grow it on a moss pole with the intention of sizing up the leaves. Mine is growing in a mixture, I think, of pon and leca, and I will say that semi-hydro is the best way, in my opinion, to grow this plant. It is an extremely thirsty plant and it dries out really fast. And so I feel like growing it in a semi-hydro self-watering setup is a great way to minimize root rot, especially if you're not like the strongest plant parent or if this plant is new to you. I think semi-hydro is a really feel-safe way to grow this plant. The next plant on my list is definitely one that I think a lot of you will be able to agree with, and that is the Hoya Mathilde. The Hoya Mathilde is really fast growing. I feel like a lot of people say that the variegated or the splashy version grows about the same as the non-splashy version, but I would disagree. I think the non-splashy version grows significantly faster than the splashy version for me. Mine is in a self-watering pot. It's growing in a west-facing window. I honestly think this plant would have been even bigger if I kept remembering to refill the reservoir. For a long time, this plant lived in a pot that was way too small for it, and I sort of slowed down the growth of this plant by doing that. But as soon as I put it into a bigger pot, it just got even bigger and it exploded. This plant is actually made up of a bunch of reverted cuttings from my splashy Hoya Mathilde and from Jenna's plants. Splashy Hoya Mathilde, she gave me some of her all greens, and I thought it was a plant that I couldn't love, but that's not true. I am so in love with this plant. The dark green foliage it's beautiful and it's really satisfying, really easy, a very easy bloomer as well. I love this plant, and I think if you're looking for a really fast growing easy Hoya, I think that's a great one to include in your collection. The last two plants is definitely going to surprise you. Yeah, you're not expecting me to talk about these two plants when I talk about fast growing plants. The first one that I will talk about is the Hoya Heuschkeliana. Say what? Not the variegated one though. The all green version. The Hoya Heuschkeliana all green version, if you have that plant, so if you have a variegated plant and you happen to have some green vines, if you look at it closely, you may notice how much faster and longer your green vines are in comparison to your variegated vines. Just like the Hoya Mathilde, I feel like the all green Heuschkeliana is so incredibly fast. Like I just for funsies took a couple of the all green cuttings and just stuck them into some pond. And I was like, okay, hey, we've got a new plant now. And that plant has just become a thing of its own. It's just growing these, is it 2 or 3 extremely long vines? And I am really impressed with how well this plant does. Like, I just wish my variegated version got the memo. Because wow, it does make sense though, because all green plants definitely have a lot more room to photosynthesize because plants do not photosynthesize on the parts that's variegated. Plants are only able to make food on the green bits of the leaf. So that's why I usually find that variegated plants may grow a little bit slower than non-variegated plants. It is so fast, so easy, so cute. I just wish it was variegated. Could the variegated version please do that? That would be great. Last plant I'm going to talk about today is one that surprised me. It's actually behind me, so you've been staring at it all this time. Okay, come on. The last one I'm going to talk about is this guy. This is a Scindapsus. A Scindapsus. I know you weren't expecting me to talk about a Scindapsus. This plant is really fast. It is so fast. I think the reason I wasn't able to unlock this plant's speed earlier is because I was underwatering it. This plant is so extraordinarily thirsty that once you don't give it the water, it will significantly slow down the growth. So I did not have any more self-watering pots, and I got really frustrated that I wasn't able to keep up with the hydration of this plant. So I did a DIY little slit thingy. It's already dry. I just watered this, I don't know, maybe 3 days ago, and it is bone dry in here. Now, if you look in the back of my fastest growing houseplants video, this plant is in that video and it is really long. But since that video, I have cut this plant, I want to say maybe 3 or 4 times. I've cut this plant back for the year of 2025 at least 3 or 4 times already. And it is already ready to be cut again. Granted, when the leaves aren't supported and when they get really far down the vine, the leaves will be on the small side. So they won't be as big as the leaves that are closer to the top of the plant, but they do grow it does grow extremely fast. And then and it's funny because I have a Scindapsus, the silver satin, or it's maybe like a combination of other ones, and it's not as fast as this one. It grows, but definitely not as fast. But this plant, definitely a shocker. I was shocked at how quickly this plant grew for me once I started watering it well. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If so, you might enjoy this one. This is my top 10 Hoya of 2025. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.